I'm PJ, and I own the xgyms, and got my degree in exercise science back in the 80s. How many of you were born in the 80s? Love it. So I've been studying this stuff since the late 80s. And after I got my degree in exercise science, I got certified with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And the best thing about my degree, getting my degree, was it taught me how to read scientific literature and scientific studies. So then I just started devouring it. Anything that had to do with health, exercise, nutrition, just couldn't get enough of it. And I still, to this day, spend a couple hours a day on making sure that I know all the current research studies and all the latest and greatest stuff that comes out. So I was telling Cameron for earlier today that you can go to any college and get an awesome education, and even the most advanced colleges, like Bastyr, for instance, is probably the best for nutrition. And they're still going to be about 3 years behind the current research, because when you teach, you got your curriculum. It's like this big ship, and it's hard to steer this big ship and make it have any kind of fast turns. So the momentum of the industry kind of bogs us down, and that's why they're behind the times. Now, if you go to any regular college, the closest they're going to be to current information is probably 20 years behind the times. So, however, I know better than that, and all the research I've studied has shown me the real way to do things. We're all familiar with the calorie in, calorie out theory. And we've been told that if we just eat less and exercise more, then we're going to be the healthy weight that we want to achieve. But people try it and they fail, and they get really frustrated. And here's why. When you reduce your calories, it works at first, because the body says, well, I guess I didn't need all that food, so I'm going to lose some weight and get more efficient. But then the body says, wait a minute, maybe we're in a famine. And so it levels off its metabolism at the new calorie level that you have just put yourself on. Now you plateaued. Now you're stuck. Now to get off that plateau, you got to bump the calories down even further and further and further and further until you're something ridiculous like 800 calories a day, hardly eating anything, and then you're still leveled off and you're still stuck. Well, it's because, hey, the body doesn't work like a machine, and you'll hear nutritionists talk about the calorie in, calorie out theory and use the law of thermodynamics to back up their point that this is how it should work. In thermodynamics, energy in, energy out. And that does work with cars and robots and machines and things like that. It does not work with human beings because our metabolism is dynamic, and it's going to adjust to whatever we're doing, to what we're taking in, the kinds of foods, the amounts of foods, and what we're doing as far as exercise and all that other kind of stuff. So, in fact, the single biggest determinant in your hormones and your body composition is food. And that's about 80% of it. And then about 20% of it is exercise and how you move and how active you are throughout the day. So the food is really the main thing. However, calorie in, calorie out theory is not the correct theory. So I was asked, how's that working for you? Because people try to argue that that's the way they should be doing it, but they keep trying it over and over and over, and it's not working. So then when I ask that question, then they have to step back and they think, well, actually, it's not working. So I better listen to something new, because what I'm doing isn't working for me. The reason that this is still a theory is because it hasn't been proven yet. So a theory is based on the act of viewing analytically and generalizing contextually. So for a theory to move forward to the next step and be adopted as fact, it must provide evidence to support or verify the theory, or it's going to show empirically contradictory evidence that's going to falsify the theory. So what evidence do we have that the calorie in, calorie out theory is either verified or falsified? Well, it's millions of people every single year failing at it. And in fact, you're still part of this huge experiment that's been going on since the early 1900s. But for some reason, people still want to hang on to this theory, even though it's been proven by millions and millions of people every year that diets simply don't work. So even if the calorie in, calorie out theory were true, would you want it to be? Because that's how you'd end up. You'd keep cutting your calories further and further and further, and to be skinny like her, that would be your lunch. And that's not much fun. I don't know about you, but I like to eat. I love food, and that doesn't look like much fun to me. So it's really not about the calories. But we're convinced and brainwashed, in fact, that it is about the calories because of the mass media, because of the main messages from our physicians and healthcare practitioners that are telling us that it is. But it's just misinformation. So Mark Twain, he was a crack up, but one of the things he said was, if you don't read the newspaper, meaning mass media is what I'm talking about, you're uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you're misinformed. And it's true, because the major media out there is telling us what they've been told, and it's completely outdated. Plus, they've got their own slant on it and their own agenda. So if you're still cutting calories, you have definitely been misinformed. You don't need to cut calories. It's really about your hormones. And here's where we start. The body wants to be healthy. And the body wants to be lean, because a healthy body is a lean body. Healthy bodies get lean easily. So if your body is healthy, it will get lean. It doesn't want to carry around extra weight. It wants to be lean. If it's not lean, it's because we're doing something to get in the way of that happening. Healthy body also equals balanced hormones. When your hormones are balanced, your body is healthy. When your body is healthy, your hormones are balanced. And balanced hormones mean effortless and permanent weight loss. If you're working at losing weight, it's because your hormones aren't balanced. It's not because you're eating too much. It's not because you're exercising too little. It's because your hormones are out of whack. So, this is Susie. Susie was a serial dieter, multiple failures, very frustrated. Exercised regularly, so it wasn't that. It wasn't just she wasn't exercising. So calories out, she was fine there. And she was dieting, so calories in were reduced, but she still wasn't getting her results. So she was stuck in this overweight status, super frustrated. And she blamed her genetics because she tried everything. She tried exercise, she tried calorie restriction, she tried both. Nothing worked. She kept yo-yoing up and down. She said, well, I must have just born this way. And that just must be the way it is. However, she stopped dieting. She ate higher fat, which sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? And slower carbs. And I'll get to both of those things later. She drank more water, less alcohol, and she switched her exercise method to the xgym style, which is the high intensity. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the exercise style today, but it's high intensity training in a very safe way. And she actually cut down her exercise time from about 3 hours a week to 42 minutes a week with the xgym style. And this is what happens. So, about hormones. Insulin is the ringleader. Insulin's the pack leader. If you can control insulin, you can control the rest of your hormones. Because controlling insulin is going to necessarily get the other hormones to also respond. So what we call slow carbs helps keep insulin low and puts your body in fat burning mode. And by slow carbs, I mean green vegetables, protein. Protein doesn't really have carbs, but it is a slow food. So is fat. Certain types of fats are better than others. And so when you're eating the slow carbs, mainly vegetables, then you are not spiking your blood sugar, and therefore you're keeping your insulin levels low. Because anytime your blood sugar is elevated, your pancreas has to respond to that, and it has to get that blood sugar back down. And so it kicks out a whole bunch of insulin. Well, guess what? When your insulin is elevated, you are in storing mode. You're storing fat, you're storing protein, you're storing your macronutrients, you're storing vitamins, minerals too. You're just storing stuff, but it is preferential to fat. So you're especially in fat storing mode. Fast carbs spike your insulin because they spike your blood sugar and put you in fat storing mode, and also eventually causes insulin resistance because the cells stop hearing insulin because they're bombarded with it all the time, and then the pancreas has to pump out even more because it realizes the cell's not hearing it, and then pretty soon the cells get so resistant that diabetes starts to set in. That's where type 2 diabetes comes in, adult onset diabetes. Fast carbs, I'm talking about sugar mainly, flour, starch, those kinds of things. We'll get to that more later. So after a while, just like a nagging spouse, cells stop listening after a while. So yelling, pretty soon you just tune out that person. Well, the cells do that to the pancreas. Pancreas keeps pumping out this insulin, and they get tired of hearing it. So after a while, they just tune them out. And then, welcome to diabetes. So low insulin levels really is the key. That's the whole point here. And it's to give your pancreas a break, because when you have low insulin levels, your pancreas is not overworking and not wearing out, eventually causing diabetes. So pancreas best friends are good fats and slow carbs, because fats don't really do anything to the pancreas because they don't do anything to your blood sugar. So even if you're eating fat, you're not going to be storing that fat because you have to have an elevated insulin to store that fat. And fat's not going to elevate your insulin. Protein won't either, unless you eat a ton of it. So protein's a safe food too. But that's why it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, because we've all been brainwashed to believe that a low-fat diet is the way to go. Because if we want to lose fat, we should stop eating fat. It kind of makes sense, right? Just saying it that way. Fat must be fattening. But fat isn't fattening. It's the fast carbs that are fattening, because it puts our body in the state where it can store the fat that we eat. And the pancreas enemies are bad fats and fast carbs. So bad fats, like trans fats and fake fats, margarine. Did you know, anybody know how margarine was invented? It was invented as a turkey food, as a cheap way to feed turkeys. And they made it for these turkeys, and they tried to give it to the turkeys, but the turkeys were too smart to eat it. They refused to eat margarine. And so they said, well, what are we going to do with this? You know, it still can serve some sort of purpose, right? So they started feeding it to humans. And now we have margarine. But also, if you ever put margarine out, if you're at a picnic and someone has margarine, just set it out with the lid off. Flies won't go near it. It's too gross for flies. They'll land on poo, but they're not going to go anywhere near that type of margarine. So it just shows you how bad those bad fats are. And again, they won't spike your insulin, but they're going to attack your pancreas just like every other organ in your body and cause pancreas problems. So then once your pancreas has problems, it doesn't know how much insulin to pump out, so it's probably going to pump out too much, or it's going to wear out faster and you're going to get diabetes sooner. And then the fast carbs, of course, the sugars, the starches, flours, things like that, that raise your blood sugar, are going to spike your insulin. So foods like this, yes, that's awesome. Broccoli, that's a slow carb. And butter, especially from grass-fed cows. Kerrygold brand, K-E-R-I-G-O-L-D. At most stores, that's from grass-fed cows, so start getting that butter, FYI. Just a little side note there. So that's a good thing. That's a great food combination. So those are carbs. Broccoli's carbs, right? But it's a slow carb. and fat. That's a good fat. And this would be the wrong thing to do. So you got your Krispy Kremes here, and you got your fast carbs combined with those bad fats. So this is the exact wrong thing to do for lots of reasons, not just for being lean, but just for general health. And besides, you end up having that kind of expression on your face. That's creepy. So, top pancreas best friends. Healthy fats, because that's going to help your organs and make your organs more healthy. And my favorite fat is coconut oil. It's also the top fat-burning fat because it has a high percentage of MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, that have to be burned off. The body can't possibly store, even if your blood sugar spiked, insulin's high, you still can't store MCTs. And coconut oil is majority MCTs. Grass-fed butter, that's one of my favorites too, because when it comes from grass-fed cows, you got large amounts of CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, which is another type of fat that helps you burn fat off your body. Slow carbs. So these are the best friends of the pancreas because they don't tell it to do anything. They don't cause any demand because the slow carbs aren't going to raise your blood sugar and therefore spike your insulin. High fiber foods are awesome because when you're looking at macronutrients, every gram of carbs can be reduced by every gram of fiber that you take in. So if you look at the food label on something and it has 20 grams of carbs and 10 of them are fiber, just subtract them out. So now it's a net 10. Protein is also a BFF of the pancreas, especially clean protein like wild Alaskan salmon, grass-fed beef, organic pasture-raised eggs, hemp protein from organic non-GMO sources, things like that. Top pancreas enemies are sugar, basic sugar, even organic sugar, and then refined sugars, and that's what most sugar is. And that's what you'll find in processed foods. But the most common sugar that you'll find in processed foods is high fructose corn syrup. And that is the devil. So stay away from high fructose corn syrup. That is made in a lab, and it was invented to be cheaper than sugar, but to sweeten like sugar. And the process that it goes through is completely toxic. So it's a poison. It's like rat poison for humans and for the metabolism and for your hormones. Other pancreas enemies, flour, like bread, cake, pasta, or pastries, and then starch, like the pasta, the potatoes, rice, things like that. So those are all things that are really going to spike that insulin and put you in that fat storing mode. So leptin is the next hormone, and that follows insulin's lead. Leptin is supposed to tell you when to stop eating. So it's sent by your fat cells to your brain to tell you that you're full and give you that sensation of fullness in your brain to tell you to stop eating. So the fat cells say, okay, we're all full up, we don't need any more, and they send that signal. However, insulin shouts louder than leptin when the cells become insulin resistant because it has to shout. Since the cells are resistant, they're not listening anymore, the pancreas has to pump more out, and then it's like shouting. And then the leptin wants to be heard, so it's shouting. It can't shout as loud as insulin, but it wants to be heard too because it's trying to tell the brain to stop, but it doesn't have as strong a voice. So the insulin usually wins, and we're put in fat storing mode, and we eat more because we're not hearing the leptin, and then that cycle continues. So this is what leptin looks like when it shouts. Obnoxious dude, right? And so the brain doesn't want to listen anymore because it's more fun to listen to the messages that say eat, because eating's fun. Eating's yummy. And it doesn't necessarily want to listen to the leptin, even though it's got its megaphone and it's trying to be heard, because the funner message is eat more food. So the next one is ghrelin. And I'm only talking about a few hormones here. There's tons I could talk about, but it's just in the interest of time, and I want to leave time for questions too at the end. So be sure to make a mental note or write your questions down. Ghrelin is another king of hormones, and that competes with leptin. Ghrelin is the hormone that tells you that you're hungry. So it comes from the stomach, and based on how much the stomach is stretched and how much weight the stomach is sensing in the weight of food in the stomach. And so if it's empty and the stomach is not stretched, ghrelin goes to the brain and says, you're hungry, eat. However, ghrelin is a liar and a drug addict, because ghrelin is going to delay shutting off its message because it's fun to eat. So that's why the hunger mechanism takes about 20 or 30 minutes to finally register, because ghrelin's dragging his feet. So he's still telling you you're hungry when you're not. You're full. But ghrelin likes to eat, and he thinks it's fun. And so he's going to wait as long as he possibly can until you're uncomfortably full to send that message. So the way around that is to eat as much as you think you should, and then stop and wait 20, 30 minutes and see if you're still hungry. You probably won't be. What I tell people to do is something called the hunger scale. This is one of the brain training techniques we have at the xgym. And the hunger scale works like this. You eat only when you're at a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 is famished, 0 is just full, painfully full. And you wait until you're at a 7 to eat. And then you stop eating when you're at a 4. So you're still a little bit hungry when you stop eating. Then 20, 30 minutes later, you're at a 2 or a 3, which is completely satisfied. And that's one way to get around ghrelin. Ghrelin is also a drug addict, because there's a drug in our brain called dopamine. And just like any other morphine family drug, it's very addictive. And our brain kicks it out. And ghrelin loves dopamine. And we get a shot of dopamine when we eat stuff, especially stuff that's going to alter our brain chemicals like sugar. So the reason that we're so addicted to these sugar foods is because of dopamine, and we're addicted to dopamine. And ghrelin loves dopamine. Ghrelin also shouts louder than leptin. So leptin's got the quietest voice out of all these hormones, which is unfortunate because that's the one that tells us to stop eating. But there's ways around it. This is what ghrelin looks like when it shouts. Remember the ugly dude that was shouting and you just kind of wanted to punch him in the face just because he was so irritating? Well, peppy cheerleaders, they're having fun. Food's fun. Eat more. This is great. So that's what ghrelin looks like. So that's why we want to listen to ghrelin over leptin. Cortisol, however, trumps everything. This is the last hormone I'm going to talk about, just so we don't get too confused. These are the main hormones. And cortisol trumps. You cannot fight cortisol. So cortisol is the dog, and the cat, he's got no fight left in him. He's just sitting there. He's going, oh, jeez, okay, I just waited out. Well, that's kind of what you have to do with cortisol. And when your cortisol levels are elevated, there's really not much you can do. And what elevates cortisol? Stress, not sleeping, things like that. So you really have to make cortisol your friend. That's what it looks like when he's your friend. Still the dog, but dogs can be good and dogs can be bad. So the way you make cortisol your friend and help it to work for you instead of against you is to reduce your stress, get really good sleep at night, have a great attitude, and that'll make it your friend. So when we're worrying all the time and we're stressed out all the time, and that usually causes sleep problems, or we're just not sleeping, we have really poor sleeping habits, or we're up partying or having too much fun and then we don't get enough sleep, all those things contribute to raising cortisol levels and makes it nearly impossible to lose fat. And cortisol especially has receptor sites around the midsection. So that's why when you see people stressed out, they're going to gain weight here first. There is hope. The way you do this and you get your hope back is eat the right foods, reduce your stress, get your sleep, have your proper attitude, And then with a healthy body from all that, you get your hormones back in balance. Balanced hormones plus a little patience, because this doesn't happen overnight. You can't balance your hormones by next Tuesday. It takes some time. So that equals a lean, fit body. And you don't even have to try. That's just how it happens. You just end up that way. So no dieting or anything like that. And lean, fit body gets you with cute and quiet, not like the loud shouting cheerleaders, but cheerleaders. And I make this for the guys because, guys, thanks for coming. Because usually when I announce a hormone talk, it's very few guys and a lot of women. And so I want to favor the guys and encourage you. You made a good decision coming here. Because hormone stuff just isn't for women, it's for all of us. It applies just as much to men as it does to women. And then when they find out what the talk was about afterwards, they're like, God, darn, I missed it. So, by the way, this is being filmed, so we can have a recording for this. And if you want any of your family or friends or somebody maybe that missed the show, then Carolyn can send the link. So here's Roby. He another xgym member, and he's a programmer. So typical programmer condition. He's not obese or anything, but he's out of shape. He sits down all day and eats junk food all day, coffee all day. So as far as cheerleaders go, getting with the cheerleader, fat chance. Here's his after picture, and now he's got a fat chance. Okay. I guess I'm older than I thought. Because that term has kind of gone out of vogue, hasn't it? Like 10 years ago, maybe, or 20. So, anyways, so what are the right foods? Well, it's the foods we ate 100 years ago. Foods with one ingredient. It doesn't even need a nutrition facts label on it because it's lettuce or spinach. It's one ingredient. Food that's grown naturally, so it's got to be organic, which ensures that it's non-GMO, and whenever possible. I mean, it's not always possible to always eat organic. I don't even do it. But 90-something% of my food is organic. And I'm trying to avoid GMO foods at all costs because those are super fattening because they're toxic. And when you're taking in toxins, your body says, well, okay, poison has just been ingested, so I got to do something with this. I'm going to put it in the safest storage facility that I can find, which is your fat cells. So it shunts everything to your fat cells. And now your fat cells are toxic. So then when you are in a fat burning mode and your liver is looking around for fat cells to liberate, to be used as energy and to burn off, it sees all these toxins in there and it says, maybe not. And it makes it really hard to lose fat when they're toxic. So cortisol makes it hard, and being toxic makes it hard. And so I eat, personally, very high fat, high protein, high fiber, a lot of water, and a lot of water content foods. And this is essentially what an ideal plate would look like. Now, this is in volume, this is in calories. So fats, it's mostly fats. The majority of my calories come from fat. And then vegetables. So understand that vegetables are very low calorie foods. So that's a lot of vegetables. And then protein is also very important. Up here's dairy. So if you're tolerant and you can handle dairy, that's great. But make sure it comes from grass-fed cows. And then down here is chocolate. Chocolate is awesome for you, but it has to be the right kind of chocolate. Most store-bought chocolate is not awesome for you. It's very bad for you. But I have some chocolate that I brought today that you can all have. And so there's vegan and there's the omnivore version. And we'll get to that later. But chocolate is, especially when it's made with my recipe, which uses coconut oil, is actually a fat-burning food. You can eat yourself thin on chocolate using my recipe. And my recipe is available to anyone on the xgym website. We'll get to that too. So we're going to have some questions, but just a little precursor glimpse at the next talks. So the next one is going to be about restoring your youthful metabolism with the right food and the right exercise. So we're going to talk more about food on that one, get into more specifics on that, what that right kind of food is, and how you can eat all that you want and be full all day if you want on delicious, amazing food, not have to worry about calories ever again, and how to do the right kind of exercise. So you're working out way less than you are now. Personally, I train less than an hour per week. That includes strength, cardio, everything. An hour per week. Most people are training the hour a day or more, especially people in my sport, which is tower running, skyscraper racing. And right now I'm ranked 8th in the US among tower runners. And all the other people in the top 10 are exercising about 2 hours a day. And I'm less than an hour a week. So there really is a way to exercise smarter. And then the last talk, third in the series, is changing habits easily and then making them stick with brain training. I alluded to one of the brain training lessons earlier when I talked about the hunger scale, but I have a whole bunch of these things developed for people, and you'll have access to the website that shows all these lessons. But that would be that talk. And the reason brain training is so important is because when you don't train your brain, you're going to be always a victim to the diet yo-yo. You're going to lose weight, and then you're going to gain it back. You're going to lose it, you're going to gain it back. Because your body changes, but your brain doesn't. If you change your brain along with your body and literally rewire it, then A, weight loss becomes easier because you're not struggling to do it. It's not a chore, it's not hard, because your brain is rewiring to make it easier. And B, you stay there when you get there, when you reach those results. So thank you so much to your property managers, because they're the reason this happened today, and for the food and for the chocolate that's coming and all that. So you guys are so lucky to be in this building and have these property managers that really want to make sure that you're happy. So just feel so fortunate. I mean, I'm sure you've been to other buildings around Seattle, and they don't hold a candle to this one. This is amazing. I mean, I almost want to rent an office just so I can hang out here, because the common areas and just the ambiance and the feel and everything is just phenomenal. So you guys are really lucky. And so for the chocolate, I'm going to pass it out now. Here's the ingredients in case we have any allergies to peanuts or something like that. So the formula that I have come up with is very different from your commercial chocolate. And this actually took years to come up with this. And people tell me all the time, oh, you should just keep this secret and start selling it. But I'm not interested in retail. So I want people to be able to eat chocolate and lose weight. And so I figure I can help a lot more people by making this public and sticking it on the xgym website in the recipe section. So if you go to xgym.com, recipes, it's in the dessert section. And there's a few different versions of it, but the version today is the coconut-only version, which has to stay refrigerated. That's why I have it in a little cooler. But make sure that those ingredients are all good for you, for as far as food tolerances and allergies and stuff. It's all organic. It's real clean, too, so don't have to worry about that. And these are the breakdowns. This is the calorie breakdown. So commercial chocolate doesn't come even close to this stuff. This is fat. This is why it's fat burning, because it's a good fat. Coconut oil is a fat burning fat. Carbs are slow carbs. They're all slow carbs, but because it has so much fiber, it makes it per piece about 0.5 gram net of carbs. And the protein is a couple grams per piece, which is unheard of for chocolate. So, and then the last thing is, in this building's gym, you can now get training. So I can train you, and it's 21 minutes twice a week. Group training possibilities, one-on-one possibilities, even one-off workouts. Like you just want to get the machine, understand how to use the machines and do your own thing. And nutrition guidance, I can provide that too. But other places that have gyms, it's working really well. And as the groups get bigger, then I hand them off to one of my trainers, between the two xgyms, but I usually get it started myself, so that's an option, just so you know. And then here's my contact info, resources, email, the two gyms, this gym, my book, the DVD, stuff like that. So I'm going to grab the chocolate, and then we can just pass it to your right, and we'll just kind of zigzag along. And this is the chocolate that can make you skinnier just by eating it. I know it's hard to believe that chocolate could make you thinner. It's true. So, you see the dark chocolate and the light chocolate colors? The light chocolate is for omnivores, because that's using the whey protein from grass-fed cows. And the dark chocolate is for vegans. And that's using a vegan protein, because that's the only ingredient in this that's not vegan. So, take a piece, pass it to your right, and then left over, we can pass it around again for seconds. And then now questions. So I probably told you a lot of stuff that you haven't heard. That's new information. And I'm sure you have questions. And I like challenges too. So if you think I'm wrong on something, tell me. We'll talk about it. Maybe I am. Here's the thing. I spend an hour or two every day on the research. And stuff that I learned last year isn't true anymore. It's not right anymore. So I learn stuff every day. I'm wrong a lot. But what I've given you is the most current information that I have found, and the most effective information that I know at this point. So, oh, and I know how busy you are, so if don't feel bad if you have to scoot out or whatever. But do you have?
Yeah, you mentioned about dairy. They say there's a lot of cholesterol in dairy.
Yeah, great point. So there is cholesterol in dairy. There's cholesterol. I eat a lot of cheese too, from grass-fed cows. A lot of cholesterol in cheese. I eat a lot of meat. Cholesterol in meat. There's no cholesterol in veggie products. It only comes from animal sources. So isn't that bad? Shouldn't we bump our cholesterol down? Well, here's some more information for you. Cholesterol actually isn't bad. And it shouldn't be something that we're afraid of. Cholesterol is actually good, and it's good for us. So it's opposite of what you've been told. It's been villainized, but it doesn't need to be. The reason that we're told cholesterol is bad for us is because drug companies make billions of dollars off cholesterol-lowering medications. But if you look into the research yourself, you will find, of the research studies that aren't funded by the drug companies, there's no tie between cholesterol and heart disease. They haven't found one yet. But they're telling us there is because of the faulty studies funded by drug companies. And I know I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist here, but this is the latest information. This is the truth. So cholesterol levels of 300 are fine as long as the ratios are in check. So progressive doctors in Japan and Europe are trying to get their patients to bump up their cholesterol because it's too low. Now, if you do research this, you will find studies that show heart disease linked to low cholesterol. So people like 140, 120 total cholesterol, they're getting heart disease. But not the people with high cholesterol, as long as the ratios are in a good balance. So cholesterol foods are fine. And actually, I started getting my cholesterol. I was a little concerned about mine because it was too low. It was like 150-ish in the 150s. And so I worked really hard on getting it up higher. And now I've got it up as high as I can get it, which is, in the higher 180s. And I'm a lot happier than that about the lower. So the cholesterol medications that people are taking are actually getting them too low. And they're dying from heart disease because their cholesterol is too low. you had one?
Oh, yeah. Do you have any advice for people that might have medical conditions that throw off their hormones? Is there, other than doing obviously the things that you talk about to be healthy anyway, but is there any way to,
Yes.
any special things to
There are certain medical conditions that can throw hormones off, and they're usually caused by this same kind of stuff that causes ill health. And so getting healthy will usually normalize those things, but if it's life-threatening, then of course medical attention needs to be sought out. But once the body gets healthy, the body fixes itself. It's pretty amazing. Even stuff like cancer. I've seen so many people just reverse what they're doing and heal themselves from lots of different things. And again, using cancer as an example, cancer is often caused within, if you think of cancer as something that's growing in a soil, well, it can only grow if the soil stays the same. But if somebody completely changes the soil by changing their lifestyle habits and completely mixing up everything, then it dies and new cancer can't grow. But where we see people getting cancer, getting healed, and then it coming back, is because they haven't changed that soil. They're still doing the same things from a health perspective. Same thing with any other disease. I mean, that stuff happens to good people and to healthy people too. So, of course, it doesn't fix everybody, but for the most part, that's definitely the way to go. And sometimes medical help is needed, and even drugs sometimes are needed temporarily, but it's never permanent. Drugs are never a permanent solution because we don't have a certain condition because of a deficiency of a certain drug. It's because of a deficiency somewhere else. So yes, if that drug's going to keep us alive while we fix ourselves, that's great, but let's fix ourselves, and then the body will heal itself.
So if you have coffee in the morning, coffee makes your insulin spike. Does it help to have protein first?
It can, because that can buffer the reaction. Coffee, a cup isn't going to do much. 2 cups, that's going to start to spike it. And then 3 cups, or really condensed coffee, can be a problem as far as insulin goes. But coffee is another thing that's been villainized more than it deserves. It's really not as bad as a lot of people say. However, make sure that you're drinking organic coffee, because coffee is pretty hard to grow. And so it takes a lot of insecticides and fertilizers and things. And then you're drinking all of those chemicals when you're drinking non-organic coffee. Yeah.
So you mentioned about sugar.
Uh-huh.
Sugar is not too.
Yeah.
What about sweeteners like stevia,
Mhm.
coconut sugar?
Yep. Good question. So if it comes from organic source, coconut sugar is fine. It has about half the glycemic index as table sugar. And however, a lot of it can spike your insulin. And then as far as stevia goes, again, organic, and stevia will not spike your insulin. Stevia is 300 times sweeter than sugar. So you only need a little bit. And a little bit of anything even sugar isn't going to spike your insulin. So stevia is a great way to go. And it's just an extract from a plant, so it's perfectly healthy. Another ingredient in this chocolate is erythritol. Has it been all the way through? Did everybody get a piece? You can go, is there any left? Okay, because you want to do it again? Anybody want some more? Okay, so, yeah. Don't be afraid to say yes, this is good for you. This is actually good for you. It's a health food. So can someone grab it and then just pass it around again? If you want seconds, great. So erythritol is one of the ingredients in this chocolate. That's also a natural ingredient, and it's a sugar alcohol. It's made from sugar, but mine is organic sources. And because of the molecular structure, it can't spike your blood sugar, and it can't be used for energy. So it's 0 calories, and there's no blood sugar spike. But you get all the benefits of the taste of sugar. Now, another point along with this one is artificial sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup and aspartame and all those things that you see in processed foods are toxic. Those are poison. So you got to stay away from those, because those are going to sabotage your health and your weight loss, lean body, goals, all that kind of stuff. So make sure you're staying away from the fake stuff. Yeah.
And so what about the sugar from fruits?
Fructose, fruit sugar. Yeah. Not nearly as bad as sucrose, table sugar, and fruit sugar won't spike your insulin unless you eat a lot of it, and then it can, or certain types of fruit like bananas. But the thing with fruit sugar is it'll get you another way, because even though it's not going to spike your insulin and put you in a fat storing mode that way, it will bypass your digestive system. That's why it doesn't spike your insulin. Go straight to your liver, and at least half of it will be turned into fat. So it gets you that way. So it turns into fat instead of spiking your insulin to store fat. So it's also a moderation food. Fruit's good for you. It's got vitamins and minerals, and it's got fiber, all that kind of stuff. And certain fruits are better for you than other fruits. But if you compare the best fruit to the worst green vegetable, that green vegetable is going to kick butt on the fruit as far as vitamins, minerals, things like that. So we don't need fruit. It's not an essential food. So we can cut it out and be perfectly fine. In fact, if we're eating half fruit and half veggies, and we cut out fruit and eat all veggies, we'd be better off, just from a macronutrient standpoint. Yeah.
So I couldn't help notice something like green juice there. Is there any difference or any benefit of juicing the vegetable versus, apart from the convenience, of course, is there any added benefit to juicing them versus?
Added benefit from juicing vegetables? Yeah. Well, there is. There's a benefit, and then there's the other side, is that the juicing takes out most of the fiber. Okay, so that's not a benefit. That's not a good thing. However, when you're juicing, you're condensing your nutrients. So to get a glass full of vegetable juice takes a big bowl full of vegetables. So you're getting all of those nutrients, well, most of them, from some comes out in the pulp, but most of the nutrients you're getting. So it's like drinking that many vegetables, which is awesome for macronutrients. And if it's vegetables, you're also not going to be getting sugar that spikes your blood sugar. So that's the great thing about it, is it's condensed nutrition. And when you're drinking juice, especially vegetable juice, that condensed nutrition, you're pushing out the toxins from your cells. So it's a great way to detox. But then the downside is you're losing out of a lot of the fiber. There's a couple different kind of juicers. There's the fast juicer, really high speed, and which most people have, and then there's the slow juicer. And the slow juicer has a corkscrew thing, and it pulls it down, and it just kind of squeezes the stuff out of it. And that pulp comes out dry, but you actually get some pulp in your juice too with that type style of juicer. So that's the better juicer, because you're going to get a lot more fiber with that kind of juice, and it tastes better, and you get more macronutrients in that too, because less are destroyed because it's slow and it's a squeezing process, kind of like our teeth. And that's how we extract nutrients from food, is we squeeze it out of the food. We don't cut it and fling it out of the food. So those high-speed juicers aren't going to give you as much nutrition. They're still great, and it's still condensed nutrition. It's just that you're going to get more out of the slow juicers. Then what I have back there, what you notice, the green thing back there, is actually in a blender. So I got a blend tech, Vitamix, same kind of thing. And I made myself a smoothie. It's mostly spinach and water and some strawberry protein powder and some stevia to sweeten it up. And it's delicious. It's great. And it's a lot quicker than a juicer, because the juicer, there's the cleaning and the prep and the cutting and all that kind of stuff. With the blender, you just cram it all in and turn it on. And it rinses. You just rinse it off. You don't even have to wash it with soap because vegetables rinse. So that's what I do. And then now I'm getting all the fiber and all the nutrients. But it's not condensed like it is when I'm juicing. So that's the difference between a blender and juicer. One's condensed and one necessarily isn't. Yeah.
How do you understand the eating non-organic food like vegetables?
With the traditional vegetables, the downside compared to, yeah. So when I say I eat mostly organic, the way that I do that and still not breaking the bank is when I do my shopping, I start at Costco. That's the cheapest place to go. And they have a lot of organic stuff. And then I go to Trader Joe's, because that's the next cheapest, and they have a lot of organic stuff. And usually between Costco and Trader Joe's, I can get everything on my list. But then if there's still something on the list, maybe Trader Joe's was out of something or Costco was out of something, then I'll go to PCC and finish off the list, or Whole Foods. But PCC is another reliable source because they won't let GMOs in their store. So even if it's not organic, at least it's not going to be GMO. So that's the next best thing. So GMO is the thing to avoid. Now there's no way to completely avoid it all day because we have to go to lunch or dinner out, right, at a restaurant, and they're probably going to be using GM foods because it's just too darn expensive for the restaurants to be using the organic stuff. The expensive restaurants use organic stuff, but most of the restaurants don't. And I eat out too. So occasionally I'm going to be getting some GM foods. And it's regrettable, but occasionally isn't going to kill me, and it's not going to get in the way of maintaining a lean, healthy body. So there's some people that are fanatics, militant fanatics about it, and then it's not any fun. So the goal is just to strive for GMO free and as organic whenever as possible. Yeah. But it's impossible unless you're a militant fanatic. It's impossible to be completely clean. But if you're mostly clean, that's all it takes. And then that's all it takes for the body to get as healthy as it wants to be, and then you end up just as lean as you want to get, just naturally, without even trying. Oh, one more.
Ask a follow-up questions. What's your thoughts in terms of the nutrition combination in terms of the age, like say adults and babies 2 years, 3 years old?
This would totally work for him. Tons of fat, tons of vegetables, clean protein, a lot of water, totally works for him. If you think about it, see, people come to me all the time and they say, well, what about my kid? My kid needs these carbs. I mean, kids run on carbs. Kids need sugar, kids need energy, blah, blah, blah. Well, 200 years ago, this is how kids ate. They were great. They were fine. 10,000 years ago, this is how kids ate. Kids only started eating carbs in the last 100 years. So before that, they were eating like this. So that's my answer. This is great for kids. Kids deserve to be super healthy too. They don't need crackers and Twinkies and processed foods. Processed foods didn't exist 100, 200 years ago. So we couldn't eat them. Kids had plenty of energy back then. They weren't all dragging around because they didn't have Twinkies. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you at the next one.